Hey folks, Nick here from Another BookTube channel, and today I'll be reviewing Army at Love by Rick Veitch and Gary Erskine. This is a series from DC's Vertigo imprint from 2007. It was written and penciled by Rick Veitch with inks by Gary Erskine. I'm a big Rick Veitch fan. If you've been following this channel long enough, you've heard his name. And this was a random find for me. I actually wasn't even aware that this series existed. The glory of just digging through bins at comic book stores, I found this 2-volume set of this series for $8. So cheap, not in demand, but I saw Rick Veitch's name and I'm like, ooh, I'm the audience for this. I'm the guy that this has been waiting for. So I bought these 2 volumes. This is the complete series. First volume is called, The Hot Zone Club. The second volume is called Generation Pwned. Remember, this is 2007, so pwned was still like an actual like phrase in the vernacular. And what is it? What is this book? This is a war satire comic that is also a romance satire comic. It is harkening back to those early, those 50s and 60s war and romance comics that were really big at the time, updating them to be violent and sexy enough for a mature 2007 audience, as well as providing insight and satire into the modern military world, and just specifically the United States and its practices when it comes to the military and war. So in Army at Love, it takes place in a fictionalized, alternate world where the U.S. is fighting a very unpopular ongoing war in the Middle East, centralized in the country of Afghanistan. And the war becomes very unpopular. So what the military does is they reach out to like middle management people at like corporations, like a Coca-Cola stand-in called Coca-Cola. And they get the managers from those companies, they bring them in to improve motivation and morale. They create this outfit called the Motivation and Morale. I don't know what Motivation and Morale. That's what it's called. And they devise ideas and practices that will try to lure people to want to sign up to drive recruitment. And what those things include are something small like letting them have cell phones on the battlefield. Which is a really interesting idea. Again, 2007, so I don't know how advanced smartphones were at the time, but the phones in here, they're basically just, the bare minimum. They have some video, they have photos, but it's not, not like iPhone. There's no TikToks. Imagine if this was written today, you could do a lot with that. But because it's 2007, the big thing here is that everybody wants to have like a great ringtone. Remember when you would choose a song to be your ringtone? Because that was really exciting. And now if your phone rings, you throw it across the room and it scares you. Is that just me? No. Yeah, so that's the big thing, and everyone has their cell phone on the battlefield. But it also includes a lot more crazy ideas, such as what are essentially sanctioned bacchanalias, where the platoons are like, when they have their days or weeks off, they have these retreats where anything goes. And it works. Like it makes everyone loves to do it. It drives up recruitment. Basically the military leans into the sexuality of war and just like, look at how much fun you can have if you sign up. And the actual story is focused on one specific platoon and some of the folks within it. So to try to summarize in some way, there's these 2 members of the same platoon, Flabbergast and Switzer. He's like a stage magician Also on the side of being a soldier, Switzer is married to Loman back home. And she's having an affair with Flabbergast. They hook up on the battlefield, and they create something called the Hot Zone Club, which is kind of like the Mile High Club, where you have sex. In this case, on the battlefield, like while there's a battle going on. And so they start that, and word gets out about it. And the head of the motivation and morale department, Healy, like it gets back to him, and so him and his team lean into that, and they think like, okay, well, how can we market this to drive recruitment up even further? Like, how do we make this work for us? Meanwhile, Switzer's husband back home, Loman, he's having issues where he owes some people a lot of money. There's a criminal aspect. He's also having an affair with his neighbor, Allie, who is the wife of Healy from Motivation and Morale. And there's a lot of that going on. Like, there's a lot of characters in here, and everybody's kind of sleeping with everybody, and everything kind of crosses over. And even as the series goes on, it's only 12 issues, but as it goes on, relationships between people start to get revealed. And it's interesting. It's like this interesting soap opera set in a war, like battleground. And probably the biggest satirical aspect of Army at Love is that while all these soldiers are on the battlefield, while they're actively killing the other people, while they're burning things down, dropping bombs on places, they're not even focused on that. Like, it's happening literally in the background of scenes, and all of these soldiers are instead just talking to each other about like their relationships and their romance problems. Flabbergast gets really hung up on Switzer, and so he's just like, while terrible things are going on in the background, he's just self pitying about like, oh no, I really like her, but she's got a husband. What do I do? So it's that romance comic sensibility from the 50s of just like the extreme melodrama of just like, oh no, but meanwhile they're blowing people up in the background. Um, it's an interesting duality, a little interesting dichotomy. And Veitch, I think for the most part, the satire works here. There are some things I think that I don't know that they landed. One of the aspects of the expansion of Army recruits is not just increasing the number of women that they bring on so that those bacchanalia can be, even for everybody. There's a character with Down syndrome that also is a member of the platoon, and his mother is constantly butting in to make sure that he's being treated the same way that the other troops are. So, for instance, he doesn't have a cell phone in the beginning because the sergeant doesn't let him have it, and so there's like a specific plot point where she is, pushing that he needs to be treated equally, so he should have a cell phone on the battlefield. But then that leads to another storyline where that kind of causes a little bit of problems. That I don't quite know what the intention was, and like including the Down syndrome character, because like, what's that trying to say about inclusivity? What's that trying to say about the military? I don't know. I don't quite get what Veitch was going for with that specific character. But there's a lot that I think he is spot on about. I mean, there are corporate logos all over the battlefield. Not just like planes and vehicles and weapons. In one particularly striking image, there are enemy combatants who are captured, and they have like sugar sacks over their heads, and the label of the sugar sack is like very clearly visible. So it's like, those are even sponsored as well. Like the hoods we put on prisoners is sponsored, and I think that that's something that's not super far off from what happens in reality. I also think that there are times when Veitch is able to be a little bit prescient. I mean, just the connection and like the need to have the cell phone everywhere you go. Obviously, it's gotten even worse now. I do wish like this was happened. This was written today with today's smartphones. There's also the all of the advanced weaponry that's been created, that's been sponsored by corporations. They have like little emojis that like when they speak, they'll display an image and they'll have an emoji at the end to denote like what inflection that is being said with. They also will be cut in with ads where it's like, now targeting this enemy brought to you by Coca-Cola, and just like that, the cutting in of ads into all of our technology still going on, getting a lot worse nowadays. It's an interesting read. It really is. I don't know that I loved it. I didn't love it. I thought it was good. I thought the relationships of all the characters was entertaining. I think it was appropriately like funny when it needed to be. I think that if you are already a fan of Rick Veitch's like deconstructive work, like things that he did with the Maxi Mortal or Brat Pack, this deconstructs romance and war comics in a similar way that those did for superhero comics. It's not quite as it doesn't nail it quite the way that those works do, but it is entertaining. And I think the art is very good. It's not as good as Veitch's like heyday, but he was older when he started doing this, so it's closer to like Boy Maxi Mortal than it is to the Maxi Mortal. But if you're a Veitch fan, I think you would really dig this. I think that if you are very serious about the United States like military, you might not enjoy this because it doesn't paint it in a very positive light. And no, it's just it's a satire, and it's a pretty good one. So yeah, I liked Army at Love. I recommend it to Veitch fans. I don't know that it's for everybody. If you've read it, let me know your thoughts about it in the comments below. Thank you very much for spending some time with me today. But now it's time to get back to reading.